Welcome everybody to the show. Today we have Estefania Hermosillo here from Immigrants Rising Above. She began to actively participate in the immigrants' rights movement in 2012 and has participated in various capacities. She has been a student, an educator, a community organizer, an activist, and a lobbyist. She believes that there is room for all types of participation and everyone can choose whether or not they want to participate and in what way. Estefania is the Community Education Coordinator, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, so when I first met you, I knew you through E4FC, and your organization has gone through a huge change, and now you guys are Immigrants Rising, transforming lives through education. Can you talk about E4FC and how it started, and then how you are now Immigrants Rising?
Yes. So as E4FC, which stood for Educators for Fair Consideration, we actually started in 2006 and came together through two educators who were wanting to support undocumented youth in the pursuit of college and career. And the organization was really, the work of working with undocumented students at the time in 2006 was not as popular, or it was not something that everyone or many people were doing. We were really one of the first organizations to do that in San Francisco, and to do that so directly and for the whole purpose of supporting undocumented youth. So Educators for Fair Consideration really pointed to that the support that we received was from educators. Educators were leading the work. Educators created different resources and conferences to support other educators. It was very educator-focused organization. And then through time, more programs started to develop, and we came across an issue. People could not remember E4FC. And they knew our logo, which was a flag, a brown and blue flag with their stars, but they couldn't remember if it was EFC, EF4C, E4FC. I'm the person that goes and facilitates or leads different presentations throughout the state. And the same thing, people would introduce us and then say EFC. Yeah. And we were ready. We were ready for a change. We were ready for, a shift. And Immigrants Rising then really came at a perfect time for us to change. We underwent an entire communications overturn. We looked at what really do we stand for, who's really at the front of our work. We just took time to do this intentional looking into our organization, and really saw that it was time for us to also change our name. And Immigrants Rising is what came out of that. We wanted people to know that we were an organization for immigrants, led by immigrants, by undocumented young people. And we brought media, way more media, in the form of videos, in the form of social media, and are making sure that we reach as many people through those outlets now. And our website is just also it was a huge shift away from the previous one that we had. And then now we have an updated one that looks more like a current website.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've made all those changes. But we say it's the same community, but just with new tools and resources.
Right. So you guys are on community. Yeah, so you guys are on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and your website is immigrants with an S at the end, rising.org, correct?
Correct. Immigrantsrising.org.
Great.
Correct.
Great. And on your social media tags, would they just find you easily just typing in Immigrants Rising?
Yeah, that should work. You'll be able to reach us that way. Yeah, and it's Immigrants Rising, and then it will be formerly known as E4FC.
Okay, great. And and one of the things is, like you mentioned, it's great that you guys are always looking and rethinking how can we reach out more people, because there's a quote from one of your scholars, Isabel Cortez. It says, "I remember thinking, oh my God, there really is a place where undocumented students are recognized and acknowledged. There are people who believe we can do it and who believe we can go to college." I remember back in the 90s, there weren't, like you said, organizations for you. And it was very hard for my undocumented students to figure out what options do I have. Like everyone's going to college and, feeling alone and not supported, and luckily they asked the question. They found the trusted adults in their lives to give them the support and resources. So they were able to go to college and beyond. But Immigrants Rising and other like organizations are great. So today we want to talk to all our listeners how they could support Dreamers and also to inform our Dreamers what options are out there. So can you tell our listeners what are Dreamers?
Yeah, so Dreamers is a term commonly used to refer to undocumented youth that are college going, that want to go to college, that see a future of success in education. And it really came from the movement of undocumented youth, where undocumented youth would wear caps and gowns and say, we graduated high school, but now what? Like now, my 3.8 GPA, my 4.2 GPA, my extracurriculars, are they valid for college? And is college accessible to us? And in many states across the country, the truth is that it was not. The tuition is high for undocumented youth, since undocumented youth are not considered residents of the state. In many states, and sometimes they're considered international students. And then there was no access to financial aid. So the undocumented youth were then referred to as dreamers, as people who aspire to something. And over the past 2 years, and even as Immigrants Rising, we could deal with that term, but we're also very aware that there's many other undocumented youth that had to enter the labor market, had to start working right out of college, did not have the high GPA in high school. And so the dreamer term has really actually gone beyond just referring to the high achieving student. We want to be inclusive of any and all students, like maybe that student who in high school, again, did not have a high GPA, or who was involved in situations that were, maybe had some interaction with the police, and now after high school is wanting to find resources. How could we do our best to serve any and all undocumented youth, no matter where they were at when they were in high school? And I think that's where Immigrants Rising comes into play, where we've also focused on not only education, but also then career and making a living, and how do you find ways to make a living? And that's been the exciting part and shift of our organization as well.
Yeah, I mean, organizations like yourselves have fought so long because there's, a lot of people don't realize, like in California, especially in the 90s, people had to pay out-of-state tuition, even if they had the 4.0 or 3.0. And so it was really challenging economically for people to have options. And definitely that has changed a lot of different opportunities in many states, especially in California. But also people get confused. So what is the difference between Dreamers and DACA?
Yeah, so really what that's pointing to is the difference between the California DREAMers and DACA. So the term, Dreamers advocated for resources, we advocated for our desire to go into college, right? Well, in 2012, President Obama gave an executive order called DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And that, what it really did is it actually provided protection from deportation and a work authorization. It was those two things. Now, many people, when DACA came into place, then used DACA, like across the country, to say, wow, now that you have protection from deportation and permission to work here, some universities across the country or some states made DACA an eligibility to get financial aid, to get them money to go to school. In California, though, there's a different policy called the California DREAM Act. And to be eligible for the California DREAM Act, you really needed to just been a student that has gone through high school for 3 years, or has gone through the educational system in California for 3 years, to be eligible for the California DREAM Act, which is money to go to school. So again, DACA is the work authorization and protection from deportation. That came through in 2012. And then the California DREAM Act of California, it's really if you've been through a California educational system for 3 years and then got the GED or the high school diploma or an AA here in California, then you would be eligible for financial aid. And again, you could look at our website to really get the nitty-gritty details, or you could even look at my email and send me an email at that, and it's Estefania@immigrantsrising.org to fully understand what the differences are. But people often confuse the two, think that if I don't have DACA, I can't go to school because I'm not eligible, but it's actually not the case. You could be eligible for many resources even without DACA.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about California is that they created the California DREAM Act financial aid application for California residents. And a lot of times I tell my dreamers that when they say residents, that means that you live here, not that you have permanent residency or you have the paperwork, as some other individuals may have for that. So there Correct. Is definitely an option. And can you talk to some of our listeners who may be dreamers? Because, one thing that's great about your website is right up on the top tab, it has updates. So DACA renewals, DACA applications, so how can they find out what's going on, because it's so fluid, what's happening, regarding about applying for DACA and whether they should or whether they shouldn't?
Yes. Well, for now, if you are submitting a renewal, definitely move forward with renewing your DACA application. On our website, we do stay pretty current. So even if you go on immigrantsrising.org, there will be updates there. You just click on updates and you'll be able to find relevant resources. I recommend you, if you're an undocumented youth or, even if you're not even sure about what your status is, you want to make sure, you want to be aware of what it is, your immigration status. And I know that when I was in high school, I didn't really think much about it. I was just, I'm here. I know, right. I was worried about soccer and I was worried about my classes. I wasn't thinking about my status. But if you, just if you're listening to this and want to be proactive, you could fill out it's called our immigration intake form. And we actually do the work of a lawyer, that a lawyer would do, to do a screening. And we screen to see if you're eligible for any potential remedies. Now, our work, we're not an actual lawyer, but what we have is we have people that are BIA accredited. We have people that are very qualified to see if you're eligible for any immigration remedy so that you could then go to a lawyer to follow through on your case. And we have found many people who, through doing our intake, discover that they're eligible for something like a juvenile status visa or a U visa or another visa option that they didn't know they were eligible for. So as an undocumented student, you do want to be looking for, is there any immigration remedy for me that I did not even know existed? And there might be. So I would encourage you to fill out the legal intake form.
Right. And that's on immigrantsrising.org under your services, and then just click on the link Immigration Legal Intake Service, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Great. And also, I think for our listeners, if you happen to just be listening to this podcast and you're a senior, it's like, I didn't realize I was undocumented. You're not alone. I mean, I think every so often I have a senior because their families didn't want to add that stress on their child or information. So if you're not sure, just look at the information and the resources, because here on immigrantsrising.org, there's a lot out there. So can you talk about some current options that college-bound dreamers do have? Because there's a lot of miscommunication or even lack of communication of college option for dreamers. So you kind of hinted on some of them, but if I'm a dreamer, can I reach for an Ivy League school to a UC, a CSU, or an out-of-state school? What are some of my options that are available for me as a dreamer?
Yes. So if you're you want to go to college or you're applying to go to college, you could definitely go and apply for